So let's talk about the decline of traditional community. So fraternal organizations are shrinking. So I think of the VFW, for example. Like, I'm a life member of the VFW, but I don't go to meetings regularly. It's just one of those things where I have my social connection elsewhere. But I know that in times past, that was a place where men would get together, especially like after the Vietnam War. That was the time where these things like the Elks Lodge and the VFW were really important for reintegration and dealing with things like shell shock, which we now call PTSD and things of that nature. Whereas now all of these organizations are more or less integrated. And so like dudes can't be open to talk about dude stuff. Because I remember the last time we went to a thing at the Elks Lodge here, there were more women than men there. And it used to be mostly a male focused group. And you see this with many male spaces, like the Boy Scouts got infiltrated by the women and they're like, oh, now we're just Scouting of America or whatever. But the girls, they still get to go ahead and keep their girls only place.
Yeah, make that make sense.
But it's something that is systematically tied to getting rid of things that are acceptable to be men's only. But yet we're totally happy to go ahead and make things girls only.
It's the saddest thing. It really is.
Another thing is like the decline of churches, generally speaking, I think is we've talked about this where I believe that among Protestant denominations and among the Catholic Church, that there's just been a general feminization of the church and a leaving behind of its patriarchal roots. And I think it is generally to the detriment, because you'll see men leaving and the women will still be there, or the women will go ahead and go there looking for absolution after they've done all of their sowing of the wild oats and they're coming to go ahead and get their forgiveness.
Again, another turn of phrase that used to just be applied to men.
Sure. They go ahead and come to Jesus and they'll be there in the pews. And then all of a sudden you'll see that the way that the word is preached and all of this is more catered to women than it is to men, and not even like a universal message. It is more catered to women. So as a result, men go ahead and abdicate their responsibilities and they go ahead and leave the church. And then now who do the women have? The sissy Nancy boys that are still there that are willing to go ahead and accept the programming. So I think it's interesting that it's the whole system of Christianity and Judaism is set up on a patriarchal basis and they're just like leaving it behind. But I think that there are the portions of the church that are growing the most are the ones that are going back to the patriarchy.
I hope still, at least at some point in our lifetime, to see a revival.
I think it's interesting because like when I talk about things in like deacons meetings or in the General Assembly,
there's a move in the room.
There's a lot of
agreement.
There's
a shift.
And they're not the ones that want to say it. I'm willing to say the weird thing.
Yeah.
And they're not going to go ahead and disagree with it. And they definitely agree one way or the other. And it's really interesting to see that. And so I'm willing to go ahead and speak up for this kind of thing. And I think that people have been too afraid to do this for too long. And so as a result, you see this like incremental feminization of the church, which I think causes men to reject it.
Yeah.
Why do they want to be there if they're not welcome, is the thought process.
Definitely. I feel like this whole mega church, non-denominational, like whitewash, millennial gray wash situation in churches is just like to make it palatable to the masses, really palatable to women.
Because it ends up being a center for entertainment rather than a center for connection. Because the church isn't the building, the church is the people that assemble there. And I think that's the thing that people forget all too often. And we can say it with our words, but unless we're actively going and mixing with our brothers and sisters, we are not handling our responsibilities to be the church.
Especially where it's concerned, where people talk about, I don't like church because I don't feel this and I don't like this. And that's
let's talk about feelings.
Okay. No, not even such feelings, but they do this and they don't do this. And you sound like you are coming to church to be served.
They're looking for the cafeteria approach.
No, not even in doctrine and whatever. Just
most of them don't even look at doctrine.
like I've seen, especially, now at the turn of the school year and stuff, you see, especially being a college town, a military-based town, stuff like that. People were like, I'm looking for a church that will do this, that has these kind of services and these kind of things, and what they can that services and programs that are for them,
Sure.
rather than why don't you go somewhere where the doctrine is good, the church structure is good,
And the leadership is
you
sound.
can start saying, hey, I see that maybe we could use this kind of service. Where can I help?
Yeah. How can I contribute? This reminds me of John F. Kennedy, where he says, ask not what your country can do for you, but ask what you can do for your country. And I think this is universally
Insert
applicable.
church for country.
No, but I think this is not just that. I think it's church. I think it's the society. I think it's family.
Yeah.
It is a universal maxim for making the world a better place, is finding your place where you can contribute your unique talents, skills, and abilities to make the world better.
It's definitely that comes from that entitlement mentality.
It's, I want to get everything that I can get rather than focusing on what I can give. And I see that as a problem throughout our society in so many ways.
Especially in the community of faith. Like, really?
I guess you can use that term loosely in that case, right? I would say that the people that are looking for the cafeteria approach are acting out of self-interest, which is a reasonable thing to do, but they are looking at it from self rather than looking at it from a selfless perspective. And I don't blame them for going ahead and looking at it from the prism of self-interest, but it is a social commentary on what is going on.
It is.
Let's talk about male isolation a little bit. So I think that dudes are having a harder and harder time finding good friends because they're busy looking at their phones or playing video games or whacking off in the tool shed, right? Rather than finding dudes, right? Instead of finding dudes to go ahead and be on this adventure of life with, right? This is like one of the biggest tips that I would go ahead and give to young dudes that are struggling is find 2 or 3 other dudes that are also struggling that you can see eye to eye with and fight the good fight together. Because I firmly believe that iron sharpens iron and that we are better together than we are apart.
And what's better, hopefully on your journey, you can find some individuals that are a little further along in the journey.
Sure, looking for mentorship. That's a little bit later on, but yeah, definitely applicable.
But like, start this journey with, a couple of party members. Find a barbarian.
It reminds me of Final Fantasy 1, where you go ahead and you pick your party of 4, and then like you do the intro dungeon, you fight Garland, and then you go ahead and cross the bridge from Corneria, and then all of a sudden you got this narrative where it's like, the 4 light warriors, they approach the thing, and they're like, they don't tell you about all the grinding they're gonna have to do. It turns out that a lot of life is a grind, and it's just a matter of finding your meaning in the grind.
What was that one show? Was it Yu-Gi-Oh that they did that whole thing about fellow travelers and stuff?
I don't remember that.
And they made like a little party out of it, and then they're like, stop talking about this like an RPG.
Maybe. That sounds roughly familiar. I don't know.
It was hilarious.
The other piece of male isolation is you see that the average age of marriage has been delayed substantially in the United States compared to what it was 20, 50, 100 years ago.
Yeah.
And that has a lot of implications in terms of family development. For example, our fertility rate is 1.6 in the United States. So that's below the rate of replacement. And a lot of it is if people are getting married later and later in life, then you just have less time in the fertility window to have kids in the first place.
What was it when we were kids, like 2.3 or something?
We can look back at it, but I think that when we were kids, it was substantially higher. It was like 2.5 or 3. When we were at the baby boom, it was closer to 4 and things of that nature. But we'll go ahead and look into it. Just something to look at. But the thing is, like, for men, this isn't as big of a deal as it is for women. Because if dudes are sitting in security world or like paycheck to paycheck world, they probably shouldn't be like trying to start a family and things like that under those conditions. But a lot of people never leave those conditions because they want to treat minimum wage and low-skilled jobs as a bed rather than as a ladder. And so that's what they're going to end up with. Or they just never have kids or never get married in the first place.
Not the biggest, but like another factor to that is these women who want to go to college, go girl boss it out and all of that stuff, instead of finding a partner to start a family with and all of that stuff while the getting's good and they run up against that game of musical chairs. And then by the time they actually go, oh no, I need to do this thing, and it's too late.
It reminds me of this saying that Mother Nature giveth and Father Time taketh away. So it's just one of those deals. But this whole loneliness thing is partly men not going ahead and getting past different levels of challenges to grow up into responsibility. Well, on the other side, it's why would they want to? A lot of times there's just not great options out in the marketplace.
No.
And the demands of somebody that's mid 4 to 6 through the moon. They want somebody that's making 250 grand a year and 6 foot and all this other
They're in
nonsense.
Delulu land.
They're in Delulu land. So you're going to end up with a situation where they can't couple because their expectations are mismatched.
And ill-timed.
So if you can't get past like the isolation or brotherhood and connection stage of challenges, men fall into loneliness, addiction, disconnection, and they end up often in despair and depression.
Self-deletion.
Yeah, and self-deletion. So the next piece of the puzzle is identity and purpose. This is where you have a more positive outlook on things. Is you've got all of these other things. You have a network of people that support you. You've got your health squared away. You've got your basic security. You're in a stable job, like track that you can go ahead and live on and help others with. If this message resonated with you, I'll ask that you go ahead and hit the subscribe button below so that you can go ahead and get more. And I ask that you send this message to someone who could benefit from it. I hope you have a fantastic day.